Just like to introduce our leader in the meditation today. And Mike McKinney is here, and we've always enjoyed the topics that he's passed. He is a former teacher and coach in the school system, retired. He enjoys filling his time, spending with his family, and doing volunteer work. Reading his bio, I was really moved to think of my. So I wanted to read this section of the bio that he's. So I quote, if you can listen to yourself, Mike, I have always had a sense of something bigger than me, something that is moved by love and wants the same from us. But I had so much of it wrong because I thought it was a reward and punishment. My experience has shown instead that we are all connected in spirit. So that even one person is hurting, we are all hurting. One of the most important things that we can do for each other, so that every life matters. As a result, I have had many volunteer opportunities involving elder care and the criminal justice system. So, Lord's Prayer, Mike will give his gift to us today.
I've been leading you in a practice called Tonglen, and I'm going to continue that meditation practice because it's one that is designed to help us to develop our sense of empathy by trying to feel what somebody else feels and then to offer them what we think might get them past, might help them to get past what grief they're feeling. It's something that we can use even as we're walking around downtown, as we're walking through the stores, we go through the cash lane and somebody's apparently having a bad day. We can offer them this Tonglen without them even knowing it. And it develops our own sense of compassion even for ourselves. So the steps are that we think of something that has bothered us or that we think is bothering somebody else, some situation. And then we think about the texture of how that must feel. You know, is it a heaviness? Is it a sensation of walls closing in? Is there color to it? So we think about more the physical sensation and we breathe that in. We just keep breathing 10 or 12 breaths, breathing that in, feeling the sensation. Sometimes it becomes overwhelming. The next step is that we breathe out what we think will help that person get over it. Whether it's a sense of calm, a sense of peace, a sense of feeling like they belong, whatever that might be, we breathe that out. So we continue to breathe in the negative thoughts, but we breathe out the positive thoughts. And the final step is that we breathe in the negative thoughts for anyone in this entire world that might feel this way. And we breathe out the positive thoughts going to anyone that might need these positive thoughts. So think of a situation, whether this might be for you even, or for somebody else. And then we'll take about 10 or 12 cleansing breaths before we begin the meditation. And now think of the sensation, the texture, the color that someone must feel in the situation that you're thinking about. Breathe that in. And as you continue to breathe in that texture, that emotion, breathe out what you think would be helpful to someone in that situation, whether it's a sense of calm or peace or belonging or love or whatever you think they need. And while you continue to breathe in the negative piece, breathe out what you think anyone in this world would need to get beyond this. And then take 3 or 4 cleansing breaths and open your eyes as you're ready. want to share with you a little bit about what I just experienced, because what I wanted to address for myself in this case was being able to be understood as I talk to you for the next few minutes. That there are powerful things that work in me and things that I want you to hear and to reflect on, but I don't know that I can do it. And so what I breathed out was just a sense of calm, sense of peace, that I'll do the best I can and you'll hear what you hear. But the piece that really got to me was the last part, where I'm thinking how many people there are in this world that don't feel understood. They have something that is concerning to them, and they don't know how to express it. Because no matter how they express it, they don't seem to get what they need to get that calm. And so they go around in a state of turmoil or frustration or hurt. And as we breathe out these emotions, these things, as we breathe out calm for them, as we breathe out understanding and peace, we hope that they feel it. So it's not a small practice that we've just done. It's important. It also leads into my topic for today. If I really live the way I say I believe, would my daily life look any different? I say that I want all people to feel understood. I say that I believe all people are loved, that I love all people. But do I live my life that way? Do I live my life in such a way that I'm trying to help them to know that they're being heard? And so that's the question that I want to address. And I want to make a couple of things clear too. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't even want to pretend that I know. I can only talk about what I've experienced and see if that resonates with you at all. And I'm interested in what you've experienced. And one of the things that I think we all wrestle with, which I'll refer to as we go through this, is the idea of who and what is God. That when I was growing up, I had a notion of who God is, which I now am very uncomfortable with, and I run away from. And I try to think, well, how else could I explain this? You know, who and what is God if is not a being, which I don't know if God is or isn't that. But I tend to think, another word that I've used is the universe. Instead of saying when God talks to me, I'll say when the universe talks to me. Well, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that either. So now I think, well, life speaks to me. The energy that goes through life, maybe that's what I mean when I used to think of God. So whatever you think is great. I want to say that, Virginia, I appreciate your reading that little bio. And yeah, it is interesting as I hear it, what I've written myself, and it reaffirms, what I think, but sometimes don't remember. Don't remember as such. In my personal journey, I can see looking back where I have really traveled this line of what does it mean? What does it look like to live the life the way I say I believe it? And I have a story that I come back to often where I was actually I was in line at the Meyer Pharmacy. This was years ago now, but it's still fresh in my mind. And I was behind a woman who was going to pay for her medication. It was for her and for 2 or 3 of her children who were obviously not feeling well. They were all there. The mother was sniffling and obviously not well. And the pharmacist told her how much the medication cost. And she didn't have the money for it. She couldn't buy it. And she started kind of arguing with the pharmacist and saying, I can't do it. Now I'm back in line thinking, I can do it. I can pay for her medication. And I'm hemming and hawing, as people sometimes do, thinking, well, maybe she doesn't want me to step in. But maybe she does. Maybe she's not that sick, but maybe she is. And I just went on and on until my non-decision became the decision. And she said, I will pay for my own kids, but not for myself. And she did, and she left. And I'm thinking, I just completely blew this opportunity. That here was a person that was raising her kids, and she needs to be healthy too. And I could help that happen. And I didn't do it. And the guilt that I lived with was pretty extreme. But it made me stop and think, if I lived my life the way I really say that I do believe, would I have acted differently in that situation? And the answer that I came to was yes. And we can talk about whether guilt is a healthy emotion or not. We can talk about shame and whatever. To me, none of that was the point. It came down to living my life the way I say I believe I should. I have been reading about these Buddhist thoughts over the last few days and came across an interesting way of looking at things. And sometimes I can kind of understand something, but I can't put words to it. Maybe you do the same thing. There's something in Buddhist thought called near enemies. And I was looking at the near enemies of compassion. When you think about compassion, it's easy to say that the opposite of compassion is cruelty. Compassion is an action out of love in which we try to show someone that we have empathy for what they feel. Cruelty is where we have an action where we don't care how you feel. We're gonna hurt you even more because that's okay with us. That's called a far enemy. That's easy to see. The near enemy to compassion is pity, where you can have pity for somebody. You can say, I feel sorry for you, but I feel so uncomfortable for what you're going through that I'm going to put this wall here and I'm not going to address your situation. But I do feel sorry for you. That's pity. That's called a near enemy, because when we pity somebody, we're trying to evoke an emotion. And the emotion that we evoke looks similar to the same for compassion. And yet with pity, we do nothing about it. With compassion, we do, we interact. We interact with a person that's hurting. In this story that I just told you about the woman with the medication, I was a near enemy. I was in that state. I pitied her. I felt sorry for her. I wanted to do something, but I felt uncomfortable doing it. So I didn't do anything. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't compassion either. Compassion says, I do something. So what I decided I needed to do was not let it happen again. And that was a life-changing piece for me. And I've not been perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been better about looking at places where I can help. And there are many. But another near enemy of compassion is what they call compassion fatigue, where you see so many places in which compassion is warranted that you get overloaded and you can't function. And you just act out of instinct. You put yourself in situations where compassion is needed, but you haven't yet to offer because you need to use it for yourself now. That's a near enemy of real compassion. Now I can't offer it to you because I need it for me. That's a matter of self-awareness. I was talking to some people before we started here, this service, that a couple of places in the unity belief statements that have really meant something to me and that I've wondered about in regards to you. One is that we say in the statement, the opening statement, that we are all one. And I thought in regards to this topic today, if we really believe that we are all one, then to what degree does somebody else's life situation, their grief, their pain, their joy, affect us? How much do we notice that and really concern ourselves with it? And the other statement is that we, the Unity Church, claims to honor the teachings of Jesus, that that's important, not the dogma, but the teachings. The way I take that is, as we look at the way Jesus lived his life, what does that teach us? If Jesus is teaching about love, how does his life show that? If Jesus is teaching about compassion, how did he live his life that showed compassion? And so we look at that carefully. And as I watch Jesus' life, I say I watch, but as I read about the way it's portrayed, he went out to the people. He went to them. He went to their house for dinner, for meals. He met them at the well. He met a man in a tree and pulled him out of the tree because he wanted to talk to him. He went to the children and did not let them be excluded from his circle. He was inclusive, not exclusive. But there were times where he needed to go and take care of himself too. It can't always be giving, sometimes it needed to be being fulfilled. And so you wonder, how do you do that? What does that look like? So I have another story for you. What does it look like to see an opportunity for compassion and take yourself out of the pity part of it, where I'm uncomfortable dealing with it, and then deal with it? How do I do it? And I'm hoping I'm not repeating myself and telling a story that I've already told you. This is another one of my favorite stories, and I sometimes forget who I've told it to and who I haven't. But as a middle school teacher, we had a seventh grader at the time who was a very quiet, lonely, withdrawn girl. She was a large girl, very unkempt, not what you would call classically attractive. But a lot of that was the way she carried herself, hunched over, sad. I taught math. She was not a great student, but she did the best she could. I'm convinced that she did. But she didn't have any friends that I could see. And when she ate lunch in the cafeteria, she ate lunch all by herself. That's all by herself in a cafeteria full of 150 students, and she's by herself at a whole table, which means no one wants to sit at that table. They'd rather crowd it around at other tables. That has to be an awkward, uncomfortable situation every single day. And the table next to hers was a table full of very, actually, well-liked kids. I liked them very much. They were nice people. I never really saw them treat anyone unkindly. Perhaps they did, but not in my view. But yet they sat next to her and let her sit by herself. But one day, one of the boys got up out of that table and went over and sat with her. And I don't really know what they talked about. I think they just talked about general things. But the kids that were left at the other table were looking over there and thinking, what are you doing? What? Get back over here where you belong. Little by little, though, those same kids joined the two of them at the other table, one by one, until there was a table full of kids, including this girl. And again, I don't really know how much of a conversation they had with her. I just know that she wasn't alone. She wasn't by herself anymore, at least not for 15 or 20 minutes. And I had a chance to talk to this boy after that, and because he's the one that told me, and asked him how he felt. And he said at first it was uncomfortable because he didn't know what to say. He's only 13 years old. But it wasn't that bad either, because you ask questions and you listen to the answers, and then people join you and they have the same experience. And including this girl that was friendless felt good. It felt right. That was a chance to move from pity, sitting at the one table with physical distance there, and feeling sorry for this girl, it moved them from pity to compassion. I will do something here. I had a chance to talk to this girl. She actually left school suddenly before the year was over, and I didn't know why, but I met her, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years later, working at a gas station. And I don't know if she recognized me, but I recognized her right away. And I went in and I paid for the gas and I started to leave. And I thought, no, turn back. And so I did. Her story is when I asked her, why did she leave so suddenly? You know, I introduced myself and she remembered who I was. And I asked, well, if I can ask you, why did you leave so suddenly? What was going on with you? Well, it turns out her dad was abusive. And as I look back on the signs of her hunched over, her not caring about her appearance, her being quiet, it began to make sense. Her dad was abusive. Her mom was afraid of her dad, but they had lived with this situation for a while until they decided that they needed to leave in the middle of the night. And they did. They got away. I don't know what happened to him. But according to her, they found life somewhere else. And they were able to start somewhat fresh. So thinking back to her being in school, she must have felt all alone. Although maybe that was the safe place for her. And here was a kid that noticed her and that cared enough about her to come sit with her. Maybe not saying much at all, but sitting with her. And I wonder how much that day meant to both those kids. Obviously means a lot to me. So the question I ask again to myself, if I really live my life the way I say I believe, would my day-to-day life look any different? And it's something I ask myself almost every day. And yet, the problems are so huge in this world. How do you do that with everybody? You can't do it with everybody. It's impossible. We just did a practice in which we sent out emotion, feelings, thoughts, wishes to people around the world. That helps. It helps us also to be sensitive to those people that we come across that are in need. I was watching a movie the other day, and I'll end with this. I was watching a movie the other day in which a woman lost her husband and her only son to death. That was all her family. Now she's alone, and she was really struggling to deal with it. So she got some camping gear, went high up into the mountains, threw her cell phone away, had someone take away her car, and she was going to live in the wild. The snow, the animals, she had not prepared for this, but she needed to be away. The snow came and the animals came, and she got into more than she could handle. And she began the process of dying, of starving. She was passed out on the floor with no one to help, unconscious. The next thing she knows, she wakes up and there's a man and a nurse helping her. And on the floor of the cabin, they nurse her back to life over a period of weeks and months. They keep coming back, they keep helping her. At one point, she's restored, and she says to the man who kept coming back to help her, "Why? You don't know me. We won't know each other after this, probably. There's nothing in it for you. Why did you do it?" And he said, "Well, I was out hunting and I saw smoke coming from your chimney. But I see that in all the cabins during the winter, smoke coming from the chimney. But when I came back to my house, there was no more smoke. And so I was afraid something was wrong and I went to help you. That's how I knew you were here." And she continued the question. She said, "But why? Why would you keep coming back?" And he said, "Because you're in my path." That whole story of seeing a need and helping someone that's in your path. How many of those people do we come across? That's moving from pity to compassion. That's living life the way we say we believe it. And my prayer for us is that we look at that, we answer that question for ourselves. That we allow our hearts to get rid of the walls. That we live our life the way we say we believe. And that it becomes not word, but actions. And I pray these things for myself as well, knowing that I walk through life confused. But I'm firmly of the belief that we do the best we can. And when we walk it with each other, that makes it so much easier. Amen to that. And thank you.
This is.
Go ahead, Dan. This is Daniel. Thank you, Mike, for your talk. Reminds me of two words, pity and feeling sorry, and two energies that have a lot of wasted energy because nothing ever happens with pity and I'm so sorry. So when we turn pity into compassion, we do something, and that's a big step. And when we go from feeling sorry to making atonement, we do something. Or I apologize, what can I do to make this right? And the last thing is you mentioned compassion overload, like especially if we deal with the public, we see so many things and we wring our hands, just too much to deal with. And I think you gave a key. If it's something that comes in our path, that's something that with our intuition says, well, zero on and give this some attention. And that's the one thing that stands out from the thousands of things we may see in a week.
I did very much appreciate your talk, your speaking today, Mike, as I always do. Feel your heartfelt energy in what you say. And to me, that means so much. You know, I think my process is to try to be in alignment with all good and all power, as we state in our mission. And I guess I have had lots of times when I've missed my chance, when I've thought later, "God, I should have done this, should have done that." But I forgive myself, and I say that I have to listen more to my inner quiet voice. The inner quiet that, when it first occurs to you, to just act, instead of to judge it and analyze the dickens out of it. You know, sometimes you had to do something even if it's wrong. Then you'll find out what's right. But missing the chance seems like a harder thing for me to bear. And so that's my goal, is to listen to the voice and try to express as much as I can my alignment with what I call my higher power. It's just smiling to someone, giving a word of encouragement, when you see they look a little down, or sitting at the table with them when no one else, whatever it is that occurs to us. It doesn't have to be payment for necessarily. If that's what you think, then do it. But to do that more is to follow through on my quiet voice. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Sunrise, and
wanted to say in my lesson as well. But I wanted to mention that sometimes the cruelty is the appearance of cruelty is about protecting something. You know, protecting ourselves from loving in an imperfect world. And that's what I kind of mentioned. And that if our love is not accepted or it's thrown out, then maybe we are thrown out. And maybe we are thrown out too. And so there's kind of a false safety in that protection that protects us from being hurt or being misunderstood or being unseen for our intentions. And so I think compassion is a way to show the strength of love that rises above that. And I think that compassion is also self-compassion. Self-compassion, I mean, I relate to those stories. I can't tell you how many times where I didn't step up and could have, and then had to have self-compassion for myself. And then that self-compassion helped redefine me, that I don't want to be this way. I want to be another way. And have since stepped up in ways where in the past I have not. So there is such love in compassion for myself and for others. So thank you.